Early in my career, fresh out of graduate school, I was a social worker working with troubled teens at a residential treatment center in Colorado. Josh lived there. He had been kicked out of one foster home after another because he was out of control. Kicked out of school, arrested, evaluated, more times than anyone could count. Therapy, medications, psychiatric hospitalizations, all failures. Josh's mother was addicted to drugs. Child welfare removed him from her care out of concern for his safety. The plan was simple. If she got sober, if she completed services, if things got better, Josh could go home. I remember Josh telling me, "I'll be going home soon. My mom is doing better." She would call or come to therapy. She would promise she was sober, promise they would be together again when the court stops interfering. Then she wouldn't show up, or she would disappear. His caseworker would tell him not to get his hopes up. Eventually, she would come back, and the cycle would begin again. Hope, promises, crushing disappointment. Josh's anger was white hot. He would blow like a volcano, cursing, screaming, attacking whoever happened to be nearby, sometimes for very little reason, sometimes for one he imagined. He was like a time bomb, ticking, without knowing the count. Even I, in my 20s, with youthful strength and foolish confidence, found myself afraid when Josh was exploding. After the storm, Josh and I would talk. Really, I would talk. About making better choices. About expressing feelings with words instead of violence. Josh mostly stayed quiet, looking down, picking at his nails, occasionally nodding. I remember Josh strapped to a gurney, screaming. Two burly psychiatric workers carried him to the waiting ambulance. Another trip to the psych hospital. The staff had called me at home. "Josh is raging. We don't know what else to do." I drove in. The look on the staff's faces said it all. Exhaustion. Defeat. Someone pointed toward the quiet room. I opened the heavy door. Josh was huddled in the corner, silent. The storm had passed for the moment. I told him he would be going to the hospital because we couldn't keep him safe. He looked up at me, just for a moment. I knew the emergency team would have a fight on their hands. Until then, I expected he would stay right where he was, gathering reserves. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the ambulance leave. Soon just taillights. I felt relief. I was exhausted, and I felt we had failed. One afternoon, a few years later, a young man appeared in the doorway of my office. I didn't recognize him. "It's Josh. Don't you remember me?" We shook hands. I invited him in to sit down for a while. He stayed in the doorway. It would be a brief conversation. He told me about his life, mostly in bullet points. I don't remember much of it now, but I remember with perfect clarity what he said just before goodbye. For 40 years, I thought the defining image of Josh's story was an angry little boy strapped to a gurney. And then, he said, I always knew you cared. Josh taught me a lesson that is still arriving. Anger asks us to stay, even when it is frightening, sometimes dangerous, sometimes heartbreaking. Our instinct is often to turn away, fix it, manage it, or abandon it altogether. But maybe the first thing anger needs is what Josh needed: someone to stay. Staying isn't about putting yourself in danger. Sometimes it's an ambulance ride. Sometimes it's the women's shelter. Sometimes it's divorce. Staying is about not letting anger define someone. Josh was so much more. Staying is seeing with the eyes of compassion, even when it's hard.